heard that sound before. You heard it in Gladiator, in The Last Temptation of Christ, in Blood Diamond, in dozens of films where a director needed to make you feel something ancient, something broken, something deeply human, without a single word. What you heard was the duduk, an instrument carved from apricot wood, played with a reed the size of your thumb, with a range of barely 1.5 octaves, and yet it sounds like a human voice crying. Every culture made music. Most of it disappeared. Welcome back to Forgotten Folk Sounds. Over the last 3 episodes, we've crossed medieval Europe with the hurdy-gurdy, stood in the forests of Sweden with the nyckelharpa, and followed the accounting across the Atlantic to the roots of American folk music. Today, we go to the mountains of Armenia. The duduk is unlike any instrument we've covered so far, not because of mechanical complexity or unusual construction or a hidden connection to another culture's music. It's different because of what it sounds like. People who hear it for the first time often describe it the same way. They don't say it sounds like an instrument. They say it sounds like a person. That quality, that almost unbearable humanness, is the reason the duduk has survived for over 1,500 years. And it's the reason it nearly broke our hearts when it almost didn't. What is the duduk? The duduk is a double-reed woodwind instrument from Armenia, the small ancient country tucked between Turkey, Georgia, Iran, and Azerbaijan in the South Caucasus. In Armenian, its traditional name is Syriana, which translates literally as apricot pipe. That name tells you everything. The body of the duduk is carved exclusively from apricot wood, not pine, not oak, not any other wood. Apricot, the national fruit of Armenia, the tree that has grown in the Armenian highlands for thousands of years. The apricot is not a practical choice. It's a cultural one. The wood gives the duduk a warmth, a softness, a particular resonance that no other wood replicates. Armenian instrument makers will tell you this isn't sentiment. The acoustic properties of apricot wood, its density, its grain, its response to moisture, genuinely shape the sound in ways that other woods don't. Making a duduk body is itself an art. A 30 to 35-year-old apricot tree is chosen, not younger, not older. The middle section of the trunk is used. The wood is then naturally dried for 5 to 7 years before it is ever touched by a carving tool. The reed, called the gamish, is made from cane. It is large, wide, flat, and extraordinarily sensitive. More sensitive than any other reed in the woodwind world. It responds to the smallest change in breath pressure, lip pressure, temperature, humidity. It is, in effect, the voice of the instrument, and every gamish is slightly different. Players spend years learning to shape, adjust, and live with their reeds. The instrument itself is cylindrical, about 35 centimeters long, with 8 finger holes on the top and 1 thumb hole on the back. Its range is just 1.5 octaves. By Western classical standards, it is a limited instrument. By every other standard, It is one of the most expressive instruments ever made. The duduk is typically played by two musicians simultaneously. Always. This is not optional. It is the tradition. It is the sound. The first player, the soloist, plays the melody, improvising, ornamenting, breathing life into the music. The second player holds a single note, one pitch, continuously, without stopping. This is the dam, the drone. It sits beneath the melody like a heartbeat, unwavering, constant, the ground the soloist walks on. Together, the two voices create something that sounds far larger than two people with two small wooden tubes. The soloist uses circular breathing, a technique where you breathe in through the nose while simultaneously pushing air out through the mouth, using the cheeks as a reservoir. It allows the player to sustain notes indefinitely, without any audible break for a breath. Circular breathing is one of the hardest techniques in any wind instrument tradition. It takes years to develop, and for the duduk, it isn't a special technique reserved for virtuosos. It's a basic requirement. The ornamentation is the other defining feature. Unlike Western classical music, where notes are played cleanly and precisely, duduk music is built on ornaments, slides, bends, trills, and microtonal inflections that don't exist in European scales. The pitch bends between notes in ways that feel, again, like speech, like crying, like the particular sound of grief that doesn't have a word. This is why film composers reach for it again and again. There is no synthesizer that replicates it, no sample library that captures it. When a scene requires authentic human sorrow, the duduk is the only answer. Cultural role in Armenia. To understand what the duduk means to Armenia, you have to understand what Armenia has been through. Armenia is one of the oldest continuously inhabited regions on Earth. It was the first nation to adopt Christianity as a state religion. In 301 AD, it has been invaded, occupied, partitioned, and in the early 20th century, subjected to a genocide that killed over 1 million of its people and scattered its diaspora across the world. Through all of it, the duduk was there. It was played at weddings and at funerals, at harvest festivals and at baptisms, in monasteries and on battlefields. It accompanied Armenian folk epics, ancient oral poems of heroes and battles and lost homelands that were themselves a form of cultural survival. The instrument is documented in Armenian manuscripts from the Middle Ages. It is depicted in church frescoes. It is described in poetry. It has been, for more than a millennium, the sound of Armenia itself. Armenian scholars trace evidence of the duduk's use as far back as 1200 BC, though Western scholars tend to place it at around 1,500 years old. Even the conservative estimate makes it one of the oldest continuously played instruments on Earth. It is also, and this matters, described as the only truly Armenian musical instrument that has survived into modern times. Other instruments came and went. Other traditions borrowed and were borrowed from. The duduk stayed. When the Armenian diaspora scattered across the world after the genocide, the duduk went with them. in Los Angeles, in Paris, in Beirut, in Buenos Aires. Wherever Armenians rebuilt their communities, the duduk played at their weddings and mourned at their funerals. It is not just a musical instrument. It is a portable homeland. For most of the 20th century, the duduk was largely unknown outside Armenia and the Armenian diaspora. Then came Djivan Gasparyan. Gasparyan was born in 1928 in the village of Solak, near the Armenian capital Yerevan. He began learning the duduk at age 6 from his father, who was also a musician. As a boy, he would go to the cinema and watch the silent films, not for the pictures, but for the duduk players who accompanied them from the pit. He later said, "The films didn't interest me much. I was riveted by the music and its extraordinary ability to express the right feelings through the duduk." He became, by any measure, the greatest duduk player of the 20th century. Entirely self-taught in the early years, he later enrolled at the Yerevan Conservatory of Music at age 52, and eventually became a professor there. The international breakthrough came in 1988, when film director Martin Scorsese made The Last Temptation of Christ. The soundtrack was curated by Peter Gabriel, who had discovered Gasparyan's music and insisted on using the duduk throughout the score. The film reached millions of people. The sound reached all of them. What followed was one of the most unlikely late-career ascents in music history. Gasparyan, already in his 60s, became the instrument's global ambassador. He collaborated with Peter Gabriel, Brian Eno, Hans Zimmer, Brian May of Queen, and Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan. Hans Zimmer, writing the score for Gladiator in 2000, described his intentions directly. "I always wanted to use this one instrument in the Moroccan sequences called the duduk. There was one player that is amazing, a 72-year-old man called Djivan Gasparyan. I want to write this for him. I want this to be about him." The list of films that followed is extraordinary. Dead Man Walking, Blood Diamond, Syriana, The Da Vinci Code, Avatar, The Last Airbender, The Chronicles of Narnia. Every time a director needed to make an audience feel ancient sorrow, Gasparyan was the call. He died in July 2021, at the age of 92. His grandson, Djivan Gasparyan Jr., continues his legacy. He transformed the duduk from a purely folk instrument, one played by shepherds, into a force on the concert stage and in the recording studio. He did it without abandoning a single note of the tradition he inherited. UNESCO, and what that means. In 2005, UNESCO proclaimed the Armenian duduk and its music a masterpiece of the intangible heritage of humanity. In 2008, it was formally inscribed on the representative list. That designation is rarer and more significant than it sounds. It doesn't just recognize that the instrument is old or culturally important. It identifies the duduk as something that is at genuine risk, something that requires active international effort to preserve. UNESCO's recognition brought with it resources, visibility, and a framework for documentation. Master players were recorded. Teaching programs were developed. The tradition of instrument making was formally documented for the first time. But UNESCO recognition is also a warning. It is applied to things that are in danger. The Duduk community in Armenia is small. The number of true masters, players who have spent decades developing circular breathing, ornamental technique, and the ability to improvise in the traditional style, is not large. Each generation that passes without learning from those masters is a generation of knowledge that cannot be recovered. The instrument is not dead, but the depth of its tradition is fragile. Where to find how to learn? If the Duduk has found something in you, here's where to begin. Finding one. Quality Duduks are more accessible than most instruments we've covered. Armenian instrument makers ship worldwide. Expect to pay between $80 and $300 for a playable beginner instrument, significantly more for a professional grade one from a master luthier. The key is buying from a reputable Armenian maker, not a mass-produced copy. The reed, the gamish, is where quality matters most. A cheap reed will give you a cheap sound, no matter how good the body. Sizes. The Duduk comes in multiple sizes: A, B flat, G, and others, each with a different pitch and tonal character. The Duduk is the most commonly taught and recommended for beginners. Learning it. This is one of the more challenging instruments we've featured. Circular breathing alone can take months to develop. The ornamentation system is not written down in standard Western notation. It is learned by listening and imitation, the way it has always been taught. The best resources are online video courses taught by Armenian masters. Search specifically for Duduk lesson and prioritize teachers based in Armenia or the diaspora. The Yerevan State Conservatory offers Duduk instruction. Some online options have emerged post-pandemic Armenian cultural organizations in major diaspora cities: Los Angeles, Paris, Beirut. Often host workshops and masterclasses. Recordings of Djivan Gasparyan are the essential listening. Start with "I Will Not Be Sad in This World," considered his masterpiece recording. Listen to it before you ever pick up the instrument. The Duduk will not give you its sound easily. Nothing worth having does. But players who persist describe a moment, weeks or months in, when the reed stops fighting them and begins to respond. When the circular breathing clicks. When the instrument stops being something they're playing and starts being something they're saying. Every culture made music. Most of it disappeared. Some of it sounds like a human voice crying. That kind is worth keeping. Djivan Gasparyan once said that when he played the Duduk, he thought of the Armenian people, of everything they had survived and everything they had lost. An instrument with 1.5 octaves, made of apricot wood, played with a reed the size of your thumb. And yet, Hans Zimmer heard it and said, "I want to write this for him. I want this to be about him." That is what a folk instrument can do when the right person refuses to let it disappear. Every culture made music. Most of it disappeared. The Duduk didn't. Next episode, we're crossing the Andes to an instrument that has been played at altitude for over 5 centuries. A wind instrument so simple it has only 4 notes, and so haunting it has been used in mourning rituals from Bolivia to Peru. The tarka. Subscribe if you want to hear it. And if you know someone who loves film music, Armenian culture, or just sounds that reach somewhere language can't, share this. See you in the next Lost Sound.